call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. This is the Porter County Board of Commissioners special meeting, Tuesday, January 29th, 2019. We're going to move the agenda around a little bit because we have a few housekeeping items that we want to get out of the way before we get into the clerk's presentation here. That way the other folks don't have to linger through this. And I'd also like to let everybody know that we will be meeting sometime today. We're able to get everybody together to discuss what we're going to be doing with the closures or whatever we're going to be doing with the county building over the next couple days. We'll be giving everybody plenty of time so they can figure out what all needs to be done, but we'll have something out there and something right away. So we are aware of it, but we have a lot of different entities we want to weigh in with first. Takes a lot of time to talk to everybody before we make a decision, and so that's what we're going to do. So with that, we're going to move right into the agenda. Let's go Expo Center first. Lori Daly, please come forward. This is a quote to install a network cable in the amount of $19,987 out at the Expo. Good morning, Laura.
Good morning.
Don,
Morning.
why don't you give us a little bit of a synopsis of what this is for? I know we've talked about it a lot, but this is for the public.
With the project, we're pulling out all the old cable that has been there for 35 years and re-pulling all new cable. It's over 50 drops throughout the first two buildings and the link. It's for security cameras, network, data, projectors, TVs, HEM.
And in our conversations with you, we feel that since we're going to be coming out of the other end of this renovation looking pretty darn good, this is a venue that does serve alcohol. And I think having more cameras in more locations, being able to, from a liability standpoint, we felt it was the right thing to do. Some people would think, well, maybe there's a lot of cameras in there. But coming from hospitality business like me, the more cameras you have when alcohol's served, that's the best thing I think you can do from a deterrent standpoint. So that's in essence what this is for.
The insurance company was pretty happy when we talked about it.
Exactly. So I'll open it up to the floor with the other commissioners if you have any other questions to ask of Lori or Don.
You had other quotes, right?
We did. We had Continental came in and their quote was $40,000, so it was over double.
Yep.
And we worked through Skillman and the construction manager
Yes,
to get
we
all
did.
those quotes, so everybody was doing
Yep.
the same thing.
Yep.
Apples to apples.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve Videotech and a quote to install network cable in the amount of $19,987. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Just go get that cable in, because then we can spray the ceilings and keep the construction job going.
Yeah, they're on it. They
Thank
are
you.
absolutely on it. We had a big meeting this morning before this meeting, so
Okay.
they're ready to go.
And next one is CF Group. This is a quote for chairs in the amount of $79,797. Lori, give us a little discussion on this, because this was a much
This was a hard one.
This was a hard one.
This was a hard one. I started this project over a year ago looking at chairs that I thought would go with the remodel. Chairs are not an inexpensive item, as I found out. We could have got even $80 a chair, would have been a standard banquet chair that screws, that would not be durable for that facility. So we looked at something a little bit nicer, a little more durable, with the recommendation of the interior designer. And they came in at $149 a chair. That was still a little more than we would have liked. So I reached out to, I think it was 6 different companies, and there were a couple that wouldn't talk to me for under $200 a chair. I said, I don't want to waste your time. Give me just a ballpark. Of course, this depends on what grade you go with the fabric and the seat and the finish on the chair. So there's a lot of moving parts to this specific chair. So there was a second one that we liked, but again, was not durable. It was $123. So I was able to get this company down from $149 to $129 a chair. And this is the chair that I am recommending as far as being durable. The grades are good grades, so they'll be a long-lasting chair. And the reason it's so expensive is we're a big facility, so we're going to be ordering 550 chairs.
Yep. And also keep in mind that the chairs that the county do have currently, which are dated,
Correct.
we'll be using for Expo East, and those
Trade
chairs
shows.
and trade shows and other things. So we won't be pulling out the nice stuff for the weddings and everything and the nicer events. We'll still have the second graded chairs that we bought 15 years ago. We're still keeping them, and they're going to be multi-used. But I think when you take Shelby Williams is the manufacturer of the chair. Again, coming from the hospitality industry, they're the top of the food chain. They're the best. Also has a leisure back on this chair, which if any of you have been to a lot of conventions, you can sit in a banquet chair, and the back sort of goes back a little bit. It's sort of the new thing that's coming on in ergonomics and for weddings and everything. But it's a very nice design. I think it'll fit the new space, and I think it will look, we just didn't want to have a shiny penny in the new space and put out 15, 20-year-old chairs. We just think it wouldn't have done the venue right.
The thing about this company is they were willing to work with us on the price,
Yep.
so I was pretty happy about that.
Yep. I know Laura was involved quite a
Very
bit,
much
too.
so, yep.
We all...
And I had Ken, my husband, look through the restaurant angle too, and he said that they're just expensive.
Yeah.
And we're going to have them for 20 to 30 years.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Any other questions of Lori or the board?
Motion to
You want to
approve.
talk about-
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a quote for chairs in the amount of $79,797. This is CF Group. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries. I think the chairs have a 12 to 14-week lead time. That was the other reason why we wanted to get it on this agenda, get it passed, so we can get them ordered and get them there in time for when we open. So, thank you.
Thank you for all your, I know it was.
Yeah, I know, we took you around the world on that, but I think we settled in at a good place,
Here's
so.
the money.
Yep, thank you, Lori and Don. Who's up, coroner's office, Doris? Good morning, Doris.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm good.
Good. What do you got?
We have a year-to-year contract that's a renewal it was initially just for the x-rays, a set price, and they incorporated, this year, they're adding a morgue usage fee for autopsies on top of the other autopsy costs, and that's worked into the current contract.
Okay.
And my understanding is this actually started second quarter of last year.
Correct. They started charging us.
And this is Porter.
Porter
Yep.
Hospital, that's where, they have an autopsy suite, and that's where we have them done.
Are there other hospital facilities that offer that same type of service in Porter County?
I don't think there's any other hospitals in Porter County. They're all like ERs.
There's other hospitals in Porter County.
But they're ERs and stuff like that. They don't
Okay.
have that. There's, some that don't even have any morgues. We used to take our autopsies out to South Bend, and they routinely charged us $300 morgue usage fee at St. Joe's in
Okay.
South Bend.
And this contract has a way to be terminated early. I think it's 60-day notice, so
30 days.
if we are able to mine something out that's able to save us some money, that we have that option.
I would also like to say, last year, summer, we met with wasn't the coroner, it was one of his deputies came up, and we talked about this and autopsies and what the costs were, because at the time, we were doing the capital plan, we had a lot of people, space was moving around, looking at all different kinds of options, and one of the things we looked at is doing autopsies and having our own facility and doing some other things. And based on the numbers, it just really didn't seem like there was a payback there for the county at this time to invest in the space and everything else. So I think it's something that we're going to continually look at, but I think right now this is just where we're at. And
Actually, the autopsies would be more efficiently handled by, I mean, they already said it's like a $2 million suite that the hospital put in, but it's actually body storage
Right.
that we're having an issue with. There's
Right.
only very small in the hospital, and they may start charging us for that. Who
Yep.
knows?
And that was the catalyst that started the discussion on storage, autopsies. We looked at all the dollars, and we just felt at this time, we just didn't feel that there was a need there right now. I think Cindy and I, the new coroner, had talked about that briefly, and she sort of felt the same way. So I think we'll let her get in, get her feet on the ground, get this going, and then I think that's something that we can always talk about, but, you know, we're learning a lot more about the coroner's office, too, now that we have a newly elected coroner, and more questions now are coming to us, where in the past that sort of wasn't happening. So more to come on that, but I think this is a good settle for now, and I think we just need to get this moving. So any other questions from the board, or?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second for Porter Regional Hospital. This is an autopsy service agreement with Porter and Porter County government. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now she can get that in place.
Yeah, once it's signed.
Yep. And we'll do that after the meeting. Thank you, Doris. Next up is, I think, what the main purpose of this meeting was called for. We have a presentation by the Porter County Clerk, a new Porter County Clerk, and this is on election equipment purchase. And with that, we would like to give Jessica Bailey and her entourage the floor. And feel free to introduce the folks that are with you, and for the record, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us, and thank you for the special meeting. I have Attorney Dave Bangs. He is also at an election board meeting, and then my Chief Deputy, Kathy Hartwig. I emailed everyone a packet with a lot of information in it regarding the proposal for new election equipment. It is, I believe, the same proposal that came before everyone last year. And we're just looking to kind of get the ball moving, answer questions, and see what we can get accomplished with it.
Okay.
Does anyone have questions on the packet that I sent?
Where did you want to start? Did you want to start with equipment? Did you want to start with, how do you want to go about it?
I think you want to address the equipment first.
Okay.
If there's any questions or issues. And Jessica did bring a sample ballot. That was probably the number one concern.
Yes, but
last year and this year is their paper. And, I mean, as you can see, this is the receipt that is generated from the electronic capacity.
Could you maybe just run through the process of how the new equipment will work, and when you would see the
Yeah,
receipt?
absolutely.
And
So there's two parts of it. One proposal had included the e-poll books, and then one proposal did not. So if you had an e-poll book, that is where the voter would go sign in on and register that they were there, much like they do the paper poll book now. We are currently using e-poll books during early voting, so many voters have already seen the e-poll book and been able to use it before. But so that's the sign-in process. And then from that, they would get a ballot that has a barcode on it, and then you would scan the barcode and put it into the first machine, the one with the white around it, and you insert the ballot into that machine, and then it would automatically populate everyone that, or every race that that voter can vote for, one at a time. It meets the compliance issues for ADA and any of that, and then one at a time they'd vote. If it's a race that requires 2 or more votes, it would only let you vote for, or I'm sorry, 2 or less votes, it would only let you vote for 2 or less. So it would stop the overvoting. But if you only wanted to vote for one person in a 2-person race, you have that ability to do also. And then it would go to the next race, and so on. At the end, there's a summary screen. And so if you changed your mind, you're like, oh, no, I didn't mean to push that person, you can click on that race. It'll take you back. You can correct your vote. Then it goes back to the summary screen. You click that you're ready to proceed, it lets you verify it again, then it prints out with every vote that that voter made. So you can see on the paper that that person selected each one of these votes. Then you take that paper and you put it into the next machine. It will take a scan of the ballot, and it also counts it and drops it down into the tray like would normally happen. This process, we just had the VSTOP audit that was in, the risk limiting audit, and part of that process was adjudicating what we thought people meant to vote. This process takes that away. It doesn't allow overvotes, which was something we had to document in the VSTOP audit, and it also, if a circle was half filled in, or if there was an X or a check mark, we had to pick what we thought that voter meant. With this process, we don't have to do that anymore. It automatically does it. And the one part that we don't have with us today is the central count machine, and that's, again, part of the proposal.
Why don't you explain a little bit about central processing
Okay.
and what that means to the whole election process? Before we had sheriffs delivering things to
Correct.
the precincts and a lot of moving parts, right? But what does that central processing, because I believe that mirrors the bill
That's
that is
currently
being
in the
bounced around
Mhm.
downstate right now, and that's going to be an integral component to that if that bill passes, correct?
Correct. This system actually is in compliance with both bills. There's one bill in the House that we're watching that you just referenced,
Mhm.
and that mandates a central count machine. So what happens with central count is when the absentee ballots come in, they're stored, and then they would be separated into each precinct, and then on Election Day, the sheriff's deputies would take them to the precinct that they should have been voting at, and then it's up to them to process it and mark in the books that they received it manually. There's a lot of human interaction with that. With the central count machine, what it does is it allows you to just take the ballots as they come, shove them through the machine, and it counts them and puts them where they should have been. There's actually 3 sorters on that machine. But
So
it
we
is-
would lose the traffic,
Correct.
we would lose the sorting,
We would lose the sorting.
the
We would-
pre-sorting,
Right, and we would also lose the cost to have them couriered out.
and then, go ahead.
How does it handle the receipts when you central count? You know,
Those-
do they end up in the precinct they're supposed to end up in, or all
The
day?
barcode.
Okay. No,
No,
wait.
You mean
what-
the actual physical?
Yeah.
Oh, the physical,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
It's with using the e-poll book and the receipts, you're not required to separate them. That's part of using the electronic process. They're just kept together.
Okay.
If you ever had to go to a manual audit,
A recount.
that's when they would actually sort
Oh,
it
okay.
and distribute it that way. But that's
They're not
one of
going
the-
anywhere. You still
Correct.
have that.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
By having that central tabulator, like you said, the biggest thing is you're not pre-bundling everything, separating them, sending them out to, the 70-some locations, risk of being lost, damaged,
And then they have to be processed once they're there.
Correct.
And they get processed by the individual poll workers at all those precincts. So you now, everything stays here, they're going to be secure, and then on election day, they'll restart that feed.
And that
They
was
don't go
one of our
into the count.
biggest problems in this
What's
past.
that?
Absolutely.
That was one of our biggest problems.
Absolutely, it is, it's a labor-intensive process.
What was one of the biggest problems?
The-
The absentee ballot
Well, and let's be,
situation.
there's a term of art here. Early votes are absentee votes, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
All right, so to put it in context, we're talking somewhere between, in this last election, 15 to 20,000?
Absolutely.
So we're talking about sorting, pre-sorting 15 to 20,000 votes into precincts, boxing them up on Election Day, shipping them out to the 70 polls, each poll, pulling them out, processing them through the machine, bundling them back up, bringing them back to this building.
Correct.
So this, in our last election numbers, this would take out the process of sorting and sending out 15 to 20,000 votes. They would just be here
Correct.
and counted.
Mhm.
Correct. Because remember, those are additional sorting beyond the election day duties of those people. So they were doing that in between time. Some worked it throughout the day, some did it first thing in the morning before polls opened, or they did it at the evening if they didn't get it done. So now you eliminated that extra task for them.
And to answer Commissioner Biggs's question, in this last general election, one of our failures was getting these sorted, boxed up, sent out to the precincts, and frankly, that was one of the issues why we had
Until Friday.
it just, with that, just hadn't been completed.
Correct.
Do you know anything about the projections of the growth of early voting? Is that supposed to continue to increase? You may, I mean, you're new.
Yeah,
Ever since we started early voting, every year it's gotten bigger. So, and that's why we added the locations at the last election.
So it hasn't shown any signs of leveling off yet?
Oh, no, none at all. I mean, it's if anything, it's shown that there's a bigger interest in the early voting just because of the convenience of being able to go to any of the 5 locations, not worrying about, having to go to a certain, building or on a certain day. Give them that flexibility.
Jessica, in your setting in on these training seminars, what problems are you hearing that do exist with this equipment, or have existed?
Having existed, there was some updates that weren't completed in the past, and I mean that's happened in Porter County. So it's important to make sure you do that last update at 12:01 a.m. on Election Day, and that's what pushes through all of the last-minute absentee votes to make sure that they can't attempt to vote twice, because if so, it'll have a red line that you already were counted. But that would, I say, be the biggest one, and that's just, they didn't complete the update.
Is it training, the training that we'll have to provide to the poll workers?
We would have to do, it was already in the plan to do a completely new training program. Part of the other issue that happened in the last election is that poll workers, they weren't trained completely, and when they were trained, it wasn't always the same training method. So some people were getting some information, and other people were getting other information, and it just wasn't a complete process. So we had already put in the plans to completely revisit the training process.
And one of the other problems was that we didn't have enough poll workers.
Correct.
And you're confident that we're going to be able to hire enough poll workers
We are starting
early enough
Yes, we are
to learn?
We're starting
that
early.
process.
I think that was, again, part of the problem, is they didn't start early enough, or they didn't have enough staff working on it. I mean, there's a lot of different ideas as to how that went wrong. I don't know that any of us will ever for sure know why that happened the way that it did, but it is something that we have made a concentrated effort to make sure that it's corrected. And that, and I think putting out positive news and real news to the voters about what is happening along with the process, trying to be transparent as possible, trying to get everybody back on board.
I think in your email that you sent us, there was one PowerPoint that had a lot of the training documents on there, because I know I read through them all. It was pretty extensive. That was the PowerPoint that we're probably talking about, the new training packages that, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's go back to, I think, Commissioner Blaney's original question, and I just want to get to right down to the nitty-gritty.
Mm-hmm.
I walk in to vote.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at, and assume we have e-poll books, and I'm at a general.
Mm-hmm.
I walk in, I check in on the e-poll book. Is this being printed then?
Yes. As far as the barcode would be.
Correct.
Yes.
All right, so that's determining what ballot I'm getting when I get to the computer.
Mm-hmm.
So I check in at poll book.
Mm-hmm.
Poll book says Scott lives in Westchester 7. This is the ballot he should see. The e-poll book has a printer, or a printer is attached to it.
Yeah.
This gets printed off.
Mm-hmm.
I walk over to the machine. The machine reads the barcode.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it tells it on what ballot to choose for me, correct?
Correct.
All right. What happens if we don't have e-poll books at generals? Because I don't want to confuse everybody, but e-poll books would absolutely be required would be required to do early voting, because all of these are different.
Right.
All right, so in a general, what happens if we don't have e-poll books?
Currently, we would be set up for precinct only, so it's not going to sort different ballots, only one ballot would be available to you, so only one ballot would be
Would you
available at that.
pre-print those then?
Where do these come from then?
Yeah, if they're not getting printed out of the e-poll book.
Those are plain paper, so you'll have.
Right, so you wouldn't need the barcode then.
Okay.
Because you just send it into
So
the,
that way which goes back to the old way of pre-printing all the ballots. You're only going to use what we use. The blank ballots will just be stored for the next election.
All right.
Okay.
We're not wasting stock like we did before.
And this is,
That's why they're not pre-printed.
there's nothing unique about this and to make this piece of paper more expensive or not, or anything like that. It looks pretty plain and just getting printed on. Just a little heavier stock. All right.
In your email that you sent us, I know I keep referring to that, but that was where all the information was. Could you, for the record, just sort of let everybody know what the current age of our voting equipment is right now?
18 to 22 years.
18 to 22 years. I go back to 4 years when I came here. I think my first 2 months in the job, the jail security system went down. That was 30-some years old and never had any updates. And the patches wouldn't take patches anymore. I think after that, we righted that ship. I think then we worked with the auditor, bringing in new accounting software because our accounting software couldn't find patches of patches. All I'm trying to make the point is since I've been up here in the last 4 years, we have been very behind in our technology that the county has had to be able to do their jobs. And I would like to thank this board and the council in helping us start moving in that direction of getting the ship righted here on the technology. We also are going through a huge investment right now in our 911, which is the same equipment that is life safety, first responders, and its end of useful life as well, too. Folks, this stuff is expensive. It's expensive, and there is no genie in the bottle here that is going to pull us out from this. And I think that the world and technology is moving forward. I think we need to continue to try to be relevant in that space. And I look at this situation just like I look at some of the other situations that we've had to deal up here with other offices and everything else, is that we're dealing with equipment here that's just too old. And I just wanted to, make a point about that, because I think it sort of falls with the theme that we've been doing up here the last 4 years, and I think it's something that needs to be brought into the record.
David?
There's one other thing I want to add, too, just to kind of, since you brought that up. Jessica, she just talked to BSOP and Secretary of State. As they're going forward, they're gearing a lot of their updates and changes and trends on how to do it for the electronic poll books and the electronic equipment. That's what they're gearing these changes toward.
How many other counties did you say were using e-poll books? I know you said that in the
Two-thirds.
So that's why the Secretary of State is doing the same. If any changes, modifications, they're gearing it towards that electronic database instead of computer command.
And that will be the form that they communicate to everybody through.
Correct.
So if we're not in that format and we're not in that space, then we're going to be sort of sitting there looking for our own patches and fixes and all those other things that I think, unfortunately, we're all too aware of up here.
Workarounds.
Workarounds, yeah. Right, Vicki?
Well, and then productivity really takes a hit when you do
As well
that.
as the blank paper that can be reused again for the next election. As we were doing the VSOP audit the last couple days, there were hundreds of pre-printed ballots that you don't know how many of your registered voters live here that are of no use now, stacks of them that cannot be used again, that were paid for, that can be used again.
Was our last election, the one that failed so terribly, was any of that due to equipment failure?
There were some cards and battery issues, things like that.
Did it play any primary? No.
No.
Thank
It
you.
was, primarily it was human error.
Yeah, that was a normal issue just with the age of equipment. We've had that in previous elections where, a board or a battery had failed and they had to go out and send the tech out and fix it. And that's just due to the age of the
Yeah. Well, I haven't made, I haven't made a secret of my opinion of it. But I would like to say this, I'm impressed with you. I think you're exactly what that office needed at the right time. I think there's reason to hold a lot of promise in you. I think that turning this next election over to you we probably will not regret that. I think you're from everything I hear and seen, you're very bright. And you certainly had no role in our last election. But as we know, we have the Secretary of State's office, who I spent 45 minutes on the phone with yesterday, conducting an investigation on the causes of our last election. As a commissioner, I have not received since November that evening, which I walked out. I got home roughly 1 o'clock in the morning, so I got a front row seat to what was going on that evening. But I've never received anything from the election board as to what they felt failed and what corrective actions that they're recommending be put into place for this next election. I think the buck stops with the election board. I think they have, you coming in and turning it over to you, I think is an intelligent move, and I wish you luck. But I personally would like to see us go through an election cycle, not only with these changes made after we hear from the Secretary of State's office and these bills that have not yet passed. See how you do, and see if those problems that existed in November of that day are gone, if they have been corrected. I think that's not only fair to the voters, I think it's fair to you. I don't think investing $1 million into the process down there is going to fix what's really wrong with it. I don't, because it was human error that caused the catastrophic failure of that evening. And I think, as I touched on, I think bringing you in is addressing that to some extent. But I think it would be healthy for the entire process if we went through one election cycle with what we have today, and then if everything's fine, you're certainly going to be more familiar with what's going on. Then we plug it in. But that's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't disagree more.
Of course.
And I think to roll this out in a municipal election is much easier than rolling it out in a 2020 main election. I think those are two entirely different things. And I think with the age of this equipment, I think we're just setting ourselves up for equipment failure that will happen. So I think, I think we can look in the rearview mirror all day long, and I think a lot of that has been done up here. I think what we're trying to do is look forward, and I think this is the direction that it's all going to. None of this stuff is cheap. I think we went out and got a pretty good lease payment for this. I think we can fit it into our budget. I know Scott and I and Laura have looked at that. And I also, I just don't think that there's any other better time than to do this. Rather, you want to keep going back and beating the dead horse, you can go back and beat the dead horse. But I think it's time to look forward, and I want to work and be part of the solution to help. Even though the buck does stop with the election board, we're here to help. And I think from this office, I think we want to reach out and let you know that we're here to help and to be part of the solution rather than try to be part of the problem. And I think that's where we all have to sort of come together on this and start moving in the right direction, because this is critical to democracy. And I think voting is very personal, and I think it's up to us to make sure that we get this thing going in the right direction. And I think this equipment is a big start to that. So that's sort of where I'm at. Laura, I don't know if you had anything to say to add to.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually received a lot of feedback from the election board through Jessica, who's sitting on the election board. I mean, your email expressed a lot of what you want to do moving forward, and I appreciate that a lot. I agree that there's human error really at the bottom of all of this, but I think the human error is going to be decreased with this new equipment. It cuts out a lot of steps, it cuts out a lot of human activity that can cause error. And I also think it would be tough to learn on the old equipment for you. I mean, not tough, you can do it, but, and then next year learn it all over again during a presidential election. That doesn't make sense to me. Elections are the cornerstone of everything we do here, and I think this makes sense in moving us forward. It's part of a bigger solution, but it's a really important part, and yes, it's expensive, but this, to me, is money well spent.
I'd also like to point out in your email, too, you know, this, since this equipment's end of life, that's easy to say, but there's a lot of things that go along with that. For us to be able to find, you know, get additional poll books if these go bad, we're going to have to start buying secondhand equipment from other counties that are all pre-programmed and have a lot of other things on them. So now you become more into the IT business of trying to chase patches, chase old e-pool books. I just don't think that that's where we want to be as a county, the seventh largest county in the state of Indiana. I think we need to lead on this. I think we've all been embarrassed enough as a county, all of us, whether you were on the ballot or not. We were all embarrassed. And you know, bold movements take bold actions. And I think that's where we're at here today. This is a big step, but I'm ready. You know, I'm tired of the finger pointing. I'm tired of the fighting. And if we can get the fighting, and we can all start working together on this stuff, this is where we need to go. And I'm ready for that. Have been ready for that for a long time. So I just wanted to point that out about the older poll books, too.
So, I don't have my computer on with me. Do we have numbers here that we need to include in motions? And Scott, do you have any of that? I had it all.
One of the questions as we move into the proposal now, Scott and I were talking the other day. I noticed in the proposal there were a lot of add-on services that this company can perform during the elections. Because of this investment that we're looking to, are they going to be there and covering us on this first election to make sure that everything does go well? And if they are, is that included in that bid price to where we're not going to get add-on in our first election? Because to me, this puts this company in the same boat we're in. So, because if everybody's worried about, and I can understand Commissioner Biggs' concerns, but if that is a concern, what my feeling is, are we going to be able to have all hands on deck when we roll this first one out? They should be there. And I think this is part of this program. It shouldn't be an add-on. It shouldn't be an extra. It should be part of getting this contract in doing it. So I just wanted to ask you that question. I guess I made a statement. I should have let you answer first. But
I don't want to misspeak. I know that we will have somebody on site for, I believe, 30 days or so. But
yeah, please stand up, give your name, who you're with, who you're from, everything.
My name is Matt Beeson. I'm Vice President of Sales and Collection Systems Software, and we're looking forward to continuing our partnership with Porter County. But you can rest assured in this agreement we've included, we'll be here to install the new system, help with the training, help support this all the way through, and we'll be here with you on election day to make sure it's a successful election. Like you said, we're in this with you.
From beginning to end.
From beginning to end.
What role did you play in our last election?
During the last election, we were
Jeremy Burton, Indiana Manager for Election Systems and Software. We have a project manager and two others here on election day in the last election.
And what role did they?
Batteries and aging equipment failure issues. Yes, sir.
So your role was to address any failures that may have occurred.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And we also help tabulate the results.
Okay.
Or make sure they in a few days.
But okay. But you were participating in our last election.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Every election for the last 20 years.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions of them? Thank you. Go ahead, Scott. Scott, do you have the numbers there?
So the grand total would be $1,829,613.72. I'm going to ask Vicki for the rainy day number here in a second, but the total amount financed, so we have roughly $465,000 in the rainy day fund to make the down payment. I'm sure Vicki will correct me, and she wants to now. So go ahead.
That's what auditors
You're
do.
very close, $446.11.76.
Okay, so that would be the down payment on this purchase, if it's approved throughout today. Then the election board has gone out through Mr. Bangs and got the Horizon Bank proposal. Horizon Bank also had a relationship with us when we did the jail security project 3 or 4 years ago. They came back with an amount financed of $1,383,601.96. That interest rate would be at 3.69%. That's a 7-year loan. I think some of the discussions that were had about the length of the loan were related to how long the equipment would last. I believe we're looking at somewhere around a projection of 10 to 12 years that this equipment would last. So that's why the financing is pushed out for 7 years. It's still shorter than the life of the equipment, but it's not condensed. Vicki this morning ran the numbers with her staff. That would put a yearly payment with that first payment due in 2020, of $227,887.64. If this, again, progresses through the meetings today and gets approved, that would allow the council to have the ability to budget for this in this year's budget session for 2020, and be able to deal with that at that time from the very beginning of the budget session. It wouldn't be a surprise for this year, an additional for this year, so it's not like we would have to find that money. So that is the total, and that would include the entire proposal at this point in time. I guess the one last question I have, and maybe David, you're the one that has enough experience with it to know the numbers. So it sounds like to me we would be at least losing some of that inherent cost, employee cost of sorting. And as I'm looking kind of rough numbers in my head, we're at least at 25% of voting is now happening in early voting. So we are roughly 60,000 votes and roughly 18,000 or so early voting. So that process behind the scenes of sorting that goes away. That's either employees or part-time people coming in. Probably will reduce a little bit of the need for either some of those part-time employees or moving employees off other jobs. But then we also lose the guessing game that we've been playing for 20 years of how many ballots to buy and how many ballots get thrown away, or how close we cut it. We've done everything from throw a lot away to have some helicoptered in on the day of. So we've gone both sides of that gamut. But it sounds to me we lose that guessing game. And so there is some potential, some money within these budgets to help towards this 227 payment, because we are losing at least potentially some labor on the sorting. We're losing some labor on the sheriff's department, shipping them out to precincts. We're losing the guessing game on the ballots themselves and the purchase of those, and then ultimately they're not worth anything 5 minutes after the election is over. We lose some of those. So there may be some ways when the council can dig into those numbers and during budget session to potentially even lighten this load a bit without new money, because there's potentially some money within those budgets themselves that may be able to be moved over to help make this payment. So,
do you think Scott, there's going to be as much as $200,000+ within that budget by moving some stuff over to pay for this equipment?
Well, I've seen ballots go as high as, what, 80,000, 90,000 for a year?
So what is your projection, David, in minus the cost of the equipment? What's the projection of decrease percentile of your operating budget because we're purchasing this equipment?
Well, the labor costs will go down because I don't think we're going to have that risk of the overtime that we had previously. That's one issue. I don't know if the numbers can go down, especially being new equipment. As we saw the last election, that's one thing I don't think you want to do is short-staff yourself and put that risk of relying on the machinery to do that, and then if there is something.
So we are going to hire the same amount of people.
I think that the labor is going to be virtually the same. I don't think that's going to go down until we have a sufficient handle.
And wouldn't you say that the labor, the cost of labor, the personnel is about 95% of your total cost?
I don't think it's that high.
Okay, I'm just concerned about finding $200,000.
Sure, I don't know if we can find that much.
Yeah.
If that's what you're really asking, but you are going to have some significant savings, especially on the paper alone. I mean, that's a hard.
Well, let's just, in a municipal, how much would we spend? 30 grand on ballots or 70?
Municipal was almost half, so you're looking at about $45,000 typically.
In just ballot purchase?
That's just stock, yeah.
Okay, and then what would be presidential?
Then you're back to your 90.
All right.
Because we remember, we always, like you mentioned, we had the issue where we ran out of ballots, and then we're rushing to get them printed and get them sorted. So after that fact, we just bought, based on the number of registered voters, that's how many in-stock ballots we had, paper printed. So in theory, for 100% turnout.
What kind of, since we're on the subject matter, what kind of costs are developed when you have this type of system in place? Maybe the question's better asked to these gentlemen in the back. What are the costs incurred by the county from having this equipment? Other than electric bill, yeah.
So today, when you have talked about, you have a pre-print paper ballot, they're 30 cents per ballot, and you may have an election where you get 14% turnout, 20% turnout, and I assume you probably print a lot more than you probably anticipating up to 50%. 100%. So you're talking many thousands of dollars that just go to waste, and you've got to get rid of that paper, you got to store it and shred it. So now we're talking a paper ballot that literally only goes to every voter who actually comes in and votes that ballot. So there is no wasted paper anymore. You only give this piece of paper out to the voter who actually votes. So there's no, if only 20% show up,
But what is the cost of that paper for the machine?
10 cents. Yeah. And it's typically bought in packs of
Now we're down to the nickels and dimes, right?
You get it 10 cents per voter that votes.
Jeff, I hope I'm not upsetting you, but from asking these questions.
Not at all.
Okay.
I think most of this.
But I'd appreciate.
I think most of this lies within the council's peruse, but when we talk about budgets and things like that, but you're more than coming from your background on the council, I can see why you would want to ask those questions.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that.
You bet.
Thank you.
Are you done? Okay. One of the questions that before we vote here, I want to sort of talk to the clerk about, because you are on the election board. I think that's sort of been missed here in the discussion, too. One of the things that I know that we've talked about a lot in our office, and I want to preface this with the press to make sure that they write this correctly. I am not for voting centers, okay, because that's sort of the trigger word for everybody to go crazy, and I know the papers like that. But I do feel that with the 73 locations that we have currently, I would just ask before this vote of the election board that you really take into consideration a lot of the duplicating of areas of voting that we have in this county. That, too, will help streamline the election process, and that, too, will make better use of our poll workers, security, ADA, all of these other things. So I'm not asking for voting centers, but what I'm asking and would like to ask the election board to consider some of these areas where we have precincts across the street from each other. And I think that's, I'm not looking for a wholesale change. I just think that over time, I think we can work on this to get it to where we find a sweet spot for both sides to where they can work and be happy, and we have, again, a process that is more efficient and more relevant to the voters. So I'm just asking you as a representative of the election board to please carry that message to the election board. We will be more than happy to work with you on that because we have some say-so when the time comes to sort of make those things happen, but it's more of a request, and I'm just asking publicly, that's all.
Right, no, and I've stated before that I do believe in responsible poll consolidation. Again, not saying the word vote center, but responsible poll consolidation when they're directly across the street or 20 feet down the road. And we have briefly discussed it. We haven't had our meeting yet. That's at 3 o'clock. But I don't see any changes until after the presidential. It's important that people know where they're supposed to go vote.
Thank you. Anybody else?
We have a few members of the council here. I just wondered if there's anything you wanted to add to this discussion before we vote?
I have one quick question. You talked about the barcode, I'm Joey Brammer, I'm trying to find it. You talked about the barcode, once that's read in, the official ballot goes. Okay, what happens to the ballot that the voters, that the voter voted on? Is that kept until the election is certified?
Yeah, it goes right inside the next.
I just wanted, because you were talking about how the barcode goes into the.
Right, yeah, so it'll go, so the white machine is what's gonna take, okay, so the next machine over is where you would put that ballot, and it's gonna take a scan of it, and it's gonna drop it down, so it's like,
My only question was that what the voters initially voted on, that will be kept.
yes, it will be safe.
Okay, but I think I might understand what Sylvia's asking. Sylvia, the voters under this system won't be on paper. They're going to be a touchscreen voting, correct? Yeah, so follow me. You walk in to vote in a general, if you check in with the e-poll book, they hand you this, it has the barcode at the top, okay? There's nothing below it. You put it in the machine. The machine pulls up what you should be voting for, and you are touch-screen voting and choosing. Then, when you're done, you get to confirm, this is who I wanted to vote for. And yes, I did, confirm. Then it prints this. This then says who you voted for again, so you can make sure you voted for who you wanted to vote for. Then this goes to that machine to be counted. This has been kept. Yes. Okay?
It's an important question.
Yep.
Important question.
Yeah, just a comment, Mike Jesser on the county council. First of all, I'd like to express my appreciation to the new county clerk, Ms. Bailey, and the work that she has done in terms of trying to sort through issues that have been problems in the past, but more importantly, looking to how we can fix this in the future. I think that should be at the heart of what we're trying to accomplish here. And so to try to not talk about the most recent election, because if you ask by anyone's standards, something completely unacceptable. And we're all in agreement that has to change. As we look at this equipment, and I appreciate the work that's been done on behalf of the election board as well, because it has been thoroughly vetted multiple times. And for as much as we had a struggle in this most recent election, the point of this equipment was a topic for discussion long before this most recent fiasco of election. So there has been an ongoing need for quite some time to address this equipment issue when we're dealing with equipment that's 18 to 22 years old, and you never quite know when it's going to fail or become obsolete. And so I think the idea of addressing this equipment part is especially important. I appreciate the work that's been done. It's also very clear that we've got a people component problem of this that I'm very, very encouraged by what you're doing, Ms. Bailey, and I'm confident that you're going to get that straightened out as well. But we, in agreement with Mr. Good, we have to move forward to say, let's get this fixed once and for all for the people who work. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mike.
I just want to make
Greg,
clear,
you want to say
it
anything?
wasn't the lack of having this equipment the last election that was the reason for the failure of the last election. Just want to make that clear.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. I'm good. Any other questions from the board of Madam Clerk or the election board, David, or anybody. This is a big step. This is a big, and to start off the new year,
You can kick it to the crowd.
yeah. Is there anybody here in the crowd that wants to stand, the crowd? The chambers that want to stand up and say anything, forever hold your peace? I mean, we're trying to be as inclusive as we can. Mike Simpson, why don't you come forward, give your name and your address, what you do. Love to hear your input.
I'm Michael Simpson. I live at 751 Mill Crossing in Valparaiso. I'm also besides a local business owner and resident, I'm the Republican Party county chairman. I've been watching this and studying this and following this, including the debacle. And one item I would like to point out and make really, really clear, so would there be a clear understanding. If we don't move forward, if we try Commissioner Biggs's idea of doing it the old way, so because it was human error, and there's no question, you are correct, Commissioner Biggs, it was human error that caused the fiasco of last year. But the legislation that is currently in play downstate, changing our election board and adjusting how we conduct our elections, requires central count. Should you not do this equipment, you make central count virtually impossible. Now, I say virtually because, yes, you could do it, but you now just added a layer of human error that we've never had, that you don't want to have, where mistakes can be made, actual fraud can be committed. Because what you're depending on is the last day we vote is the Saturday before the Tuesday election. So then you have to take all those final votes. You have to make sure that every paper poll book has marked in it the person whom voted in absentee. You're right, Scott, we use that word for early and everything. It's the same thing. You have to make sure every one of those is marked. And you still have absentee ballots that are being mailed in that can come in all the way until noon on election day. That wouldn't preclude a person from showing up at the polls on election day and casting a ballot again, because there'll be no record of it. With the e-poll books, everything will be scanned in that will block that person, won't block them, it'll create a provisional ballot. Thus, the election board with the clerk will be able to try to figure out what this voter intended to do by voting twice. But if you do it the manual old-fashioned way, you're back to the same human errors that I watched happen, where you're sorting ballots, moving ballots across the county in police cars, sheriff's cars, whatever you want to call them. You're depending on, I walked in the presidential election in 2016, I walked into my mother's and father's polling place because I took them to the polls so they could vote, and there were absentee ballots scattered all over the tables in grocery bags because they were busy trying to feed them in the machine. And of course, we all remember the turnout for that was just as giant, actually just a little bit more than this last one. So people were asking, why are there ballots? People were freaked out seeing ballots lay on the tables in front of everybody. Somebody's ballot was laying there. So again, central count, the security, the efficiency, the effectiveness is critical. E-poll books guarantees some quality check and making sure we never get double voting or mistakes aren't made and we don't get any fraud. So going backwards and living in the past is a fool's errand. It's a fool's errand. So I respect Commissioner Biggs's wanting to look at different things and vet everything possible, and I understand the money part. I agree with the money part. We always got to figure out the money part. But to go backwards with 20-year-old plus equipment and do the same thing again, we're inviting a second disaster. I believe Court Bailey and the Election Board will do a great job, and they'll be able to mitigate any of those errors. But again, we're inviting ourselves for error. So all I do is implore the commissioners as well as council members who are here and the election board members that are here, please, please, I beg of you, please purchase the new equipment, move forward, and yes, if there's any way we can consolidate, the key word is consolidate, polling locations, consolidate, use our big high schools as mega centers that has all the parking and ADA accessible needed to handle thousands of voters on election day. Please do that, but please purchase the equipment. As a citizen and taxpayer, I would also appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Anybody else wishing to, I think we got everybody. Hi, Sylvia.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
I could ask this tonight, but I just want to know, with the using the equal book, you do early voting, or absentee voting, whatever you want to call it, and then you, within a matter of whatever, 3 weeks, you decide, I want to, and you were pointing that out with the equal book. Are you going to be able, because right now, with the poll books that we're using, you can go in and change mine and vote on election day, and that last vote is vote that counts. Is that correct? Yes, it is now. You don't know?
Are you saying if you voted twice?
No, here. What she's saying is this. Right now, if you go to early voting, and you vote on the first day of early voting, you vote 2 weeks later, you don't like your vote anymore. There's a process to come in, spoil the old, and vote again. She wants to make sure that process is still available with this equipment.
Would we be losing that?
No.
That's all I want to know.
All right. Thank you, Sylvia. Anybody else? Looks like it's come to that time.
Okay, well, I'd like to make a motion to approve the purchase of the ES&S election equipment and e-poll books contingent on approval by both the election board and the county council for $1,829,613.72.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We'll be meeting, Commissioners' meeting, next meeting will be next Tuesday, the 5th of February. And like I said, we'll be getting some announcements out on potential closures of the county building and everything to give everybody plenty of time to plan for the next day or two here. So with that, this board stands in recess.